This is Join Us in France, episode 220. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent. Are you getting for a trip to Paris, Provence, maybe Normandy, somewhere else in France? On this podcast, you'll hear conversations about France. I publish 3 types of episodes. Number 1, trip reports, where I invite listeners who had a great trip to France come share the best of their trip and give you inspiration and share tips for your own vacation to France. Number 2, conversations with licensed tour guides. Most of the time, that tour guide is my friend Elise because she can tell us about French history, art, architecture, etc. This is also where we take you off the beaten track to places you may have never heard of, but should consider checking out because they're great. My guest today is not a tour guide, but she's a professional photographer, so this episode belongs in this category. And number 3, solo shows with me, Annie, to clue you in about how to be a savvy traveler in France, share my love of French food, wine, culture on my quest to rediscover my own country. On today's episode, photographer Jessica Kosmack comes back to share 26 tips for taking better vacation photos. Capturing good vacation images does not come natural to most of us. Let's think about it together and see where we can improve. Is it about the photography equipment or is it something else? We talk about camera gear a little bit in this episode, including some good cameras you can put in the hands of your children. That will be sturdy enough, but most of the tips have nothing to do with equipment and everything to do with mindset. Show notes and photos for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/220. Join Us in France is brought to you by Patreon supporters and Addicted to France, the small group tour company for people who want to meet me and see France in my way, I guess, in a different way, where we can share a few hours together and discover a new place for you. Not for me, but for you. I've just added several tours and you can see all the details on addictedtofrance.com. Those are half-day walking tours. They will be between May 5th and May 8th, 2019. And I may announce more dates if there is demand. We'll see. I'll be taking you on walking tours of Montmartre, Père-Lachaise, Saint-Germain-des-Prés, the Latin Quarter, the Marais, of course, always a favorite, right? And Île de la Cité. I'll also be taking a private group to Giverny, Monet's house in Giverny, but that's sold out already. I guess I could add one more Giverny day. Just email me if that's something you're itching to do. So May 5th through May 8th, 2019. The price is really reasonable and we'll get to hang out, share a lunch or some drinks together, discover Paris together, talk about some of the people who made the city great, historical events, crazy things that happened in various places, and all the things that make Paris such an interesting city. So to go see a list of all the tours, go to addictedtofrance.com and email me, Annie, at joinusinfrance.com if you have any inquiries. Jessica, hello, welcome to Join Us in France.
Hello, Annie, bonjour.
Bonjour. I'm very excited to talk to you about photography because I love photography. I don't know why I love it so much because it's a bug I caught later in life, but it's been a fun thing for me. And I've noticed that your photos are just really interesting. So I want to know, how did you get to take such excellent photos while on vacation in France?
Well, thank you, first of all. Thank you for that. So I have always loved, well, for as long as I can remember, I've loved photography. And as I mentioned in a previous episode, I lived in France for a year back in university. And back then it was just film. Mm-hmm. And there were no digital cameras yet. And so I remember coming home with, I think, after a year abroad, coming home with, I don't know, close to 100 rolls of film or something like that. None of them were developed. So it was this big, excitement of getting back. Yeah, it was amazing. And that's sort of, then I caught, that was it for me. Travel and photography, that was it. Yeah. So, and then I eventually got, into digital. And so I have a full-time job working in communications, but I'm also a photographer and do a lot of family photography and documentary photography, that sort of thing. Cool. And so when I'm on vacation, I'm trying to avoid the stand in front of the Eiffel Tower and let me get your picture shot. And also my kids are at an age, so my kids are 9 and 6, and they've grown up with me taking pictures of them since they were, infants. Yeah, so they know. They're tired of posing, right? Yeah. So they just want to do their own thing. So a lot of my challenge, I guess, is trying to get photos where they're just doing what they're doing, or we're all just doing what they're doing. And so they end up, I think my photos end up being more just real life. Spontaneity. Yeah. We do get the occasional, lined up posed shot, but not very many. Yeah.
Well, and also the angle that you use is really interesting. Like, you'll be low or high, or you'll just see a corner of the interesting monument. Yes. But, but not all of it. And it just makes it really interesting. And your kids are doing something interesting in front of the monument. So it's...
Yes. So, that's how I can get them to cooperate. If we make it into a game, or they could jump off something, or climb on something, and then I can also get a picture at the same time, I think that makes for a more interesting photo anyway. Right. And then while we're on vacation, a lot of what I'm doing is just watching to see what interests them. So, I have a lot of pictures, or a few pictures, where they are peering up into the glass case with the ice cream flavors.
Yeah, because that's where you get the interesting facial expressions and all that.
Yeah. So, so it's, for me, it was a bit hard for me to plan for this trip, to be honest, because I was so excited about taking pictures, but I also knew that not everyone would cooperate with my level of love for photography.
Yes, they do get sick of us after a while.
Yeah. And so there's a few things I did to sort of prepare for that. One was to prepare for that mentally, that this isn't a solo photo journey that I'm going on. This is a family vacation, and I'm not going to go out every day with, 3 different cameras and 3 different lenses. And, that actually was stressing me out, just to think about even going out for a day with all that gear. Yeah. And then also to just try, because we were going for a nice length of time, our trip was a little over 2 weeks, that I didn't need to capture every single moment of every single day. Right. And that sort of freed me up to be okay with even leaving my camera at home sometimes and not bringing it. Or the one thing I did, which I found really freeing, was I decided when we were going out, so in Paris, for example, Paris was a place where we would leave in the morning and may not come back until dinner time, because we'd be gone all day. I would just decide I'm going to bring 1 camera and 1 lens, and that's it. And so I'd have to pick what I was going to bring. Yeah. But
so what cameras did you bring into France? What cameras and lenses did you pack?
So I have a digital SLR, so I have a Canon camera, so I brought that.
Which
and I
one?
brought the 6D.
Yeah, that's the one I have too. I have two of them. Yep.
Oh. So I brought that, and then I brought my film camera because I'm getting back into film photography.
Because you're nuts.
Oh my gosh, Annie, I love it so much.
Yeah.
So I have a Canon Rebel 2000, which is an old camera, but it's an automatic. So, and what is great is that it would take my Canon lenses. So all of my Canon lenses, and I brought 3. So I brought the 24 millimeter, the 35 millimeter, and the 50 millimeter. All of those. So
these are prime lenses?
They're all prime lenses.
Okay. So for the people who are not nerds, a prime lens is a lens that doesn't change focal distance.
That's right.
So
you can't.
Right. So you do the walking. If you want to be closer, you get closer. If you want to be further, you get further. You do the zooming with your feet.
Yeah, exactly. And my favorite and preferred style of photography is much more of a documentary or street style photography. So I find that the 35 and the 24 millimeter are perfectly suited for that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it also eliminates any more decisions I have to make. I can't zoom. I can only do what the lens is going to do. So I don't.
And they're also smaller and lighter. And prime lenses are smaller, than.
Yeah, well, I don't know. My 24 millimeter doesn't feel that
really
small.
Oh, I don't have. I just have a 50 prime lens, but otherwise I
love that one because it is small and it's light. Yeah. So I brought the digital. I brought the film camera, and of course, then I also brought 20 rolls of film because I pack that. And then I brought a film camera, but like a toy camera. And I brought that because my son just liked carrying it around and taking pictures with it. So had it loaded with film, but if nothing turned out, I didn't really care. It was more just for him.
For him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people bring an inexpensive digital camera for their kids. Yeah. Which is wonderful. Your daughter had one?
She had one, and hers is, it can go underwater. So she actually didn't use it a ton on the trip, but when we were in a place with a pool, and she spent, an hour taking underwater photos of her brother doing handstands and retrieving things from the water. Yeah, but that was
good.
fun.
That's good. Yeah, and I would caution you, if you're going to give a digital camera to your kids just so that they can enjoy the experience of doing some photography as well, make sure you practice a little bit at home before you come because, they need to know a few things, and they mostly need to know not to twirl the camera around, and then swing it at their brother or whatever, which I've seen.
Well, so my daughter asked for a camera for Christmas last year. So we got her this digital point and shoot. Yeah. And I can share the model with it. I can't remember what it is right now, but we did some research knowing that at the time she was only 8. Mm-hmm. And so this camera is waterproof, but it's also drop proof.
Oh, wow.
So it can be dropped from 10 feet or something.
Oh, definitely share the model.
Yes. And so that was really appealing to us. And mind you, she hasn't dropped it yet, but I like knowing that hopefully it would survive if she did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because some kids, they're kids, So I've known people who just have this old digital camera point and shoot that they've had for years, and they just go, let's dig that up and use that. And then the first day of the trip, the kid just crushes it or something.
Well, and you also want it to be good enough that the pictures turn out. I mean, they're not spending time thinking about lighting and composition, and they're just snapping the picture. So, the newer models are pretty good at just taking a good photo without trying very hard. Right.
And also some of these older digital cameras, you have to be able to navigate the menu system. So to
Yes.
be able to tell it, oh, I'm now indoors or I'm now, moving or something. And, if the parents don't know how to do this, then the kids are just going to get frustrated. So if you're going to bring a digital camera for your kids, play with it a little bit and read the manual or find some tutorial on YouTube or something about how to use that particular model. Because there's some like Sony cameras. You give me a Sony camera and I don't know what to do with it because the menus are so different from Canon. Or Nikon is also very different. So even the point and shoots, they're kind of all different a little bit. A lot.
If you want to go really analog, I mean, I've seen people, again, bringing back the disposable camera.
Yeah.
So just grab a disposable camera. They're still very inexpensive.
Yeah.
There are still, contrary to what you might think, there are a lot of film labs that will develop film.
Sure.
And give your kids that. I mean, there was something, my son preferred a film camera experience on this trip because I think he just liked in his mind, he would be setting up the shot and figuring out what it was and he couldn't see the end result. So
right.
There was something kind of cool about
the
that.
Anticipation.
And a disposable camera is, $10, $12, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's another option. And then you really don't have to worry if it's dropped or lost or
right. And then of course you have the Polaroid cameras, which are fun for kids too. They don't do much other than develop the film right then, but it can be fun for kids.
Yeah, it can be fun. I do have a bit of a camera problem. I mean, I have a lot of cameras, but and I just got a vintage Polaroid camera, Annie. So, but yes, you can get a lot of those are fun, and I actually think the newer Polaroids or the Fuji Instax cameras, those are really fun if the kids are keeping a journal or something for the trip.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can take a picture or a few pictures from your day and then they can tape it or glue it right into their journal.
Right.
So,
and then write something that day or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it.
Yeah. And I will say I had 2 good cameras, but then I also had my iPhone and I used that a ton.
Right. Yeah, we need to get to that because the iPhones anymore have really good, and also the Samsungs, they really have good cameras. The Pixels have good cameras too.
They do, yeah. So I was not, I didn't want to be hard on myself if, some days I just only brought my iPhone with me because it does take amazing pictures, and I still would try to take the type of picture I would take, in terms of composition or perspective or whatever.
Right.
I still applied that same mindset to my iPhone.
Right.
And I think it's just there's some saying about the best camera is the one that you have with you or something like that.
Exactly. And it's so true. I mean, anymore, if I'm going somewhere and I know I want to take pictures, I will bring my DSLR and a lens. I usually I have 17 to 24.
Okay.
That I use a ton. For some reason, that's the one I use the most.
Yeah.
But if I have just my phone, I will take really good pictures with just the phone. And again, like I don't have little kids around anymore, so I can take pictures of the dogs. And just like with the kids and dogs, you just lower your perspective, like point up at them.
That's right.
And it will look very different, and it will look interesting, because from your height, sometimes it's not interesting.
No. I mean, I think generally in terms of composition, if there's little people or pets or whatever, getting down to their level is a great way to totally change the feeling of a photo.
Yep.
And then just paying attention to what's in the photo. Is there a giant garbage can right behind them?
Yeah.
Or is there a light post that looks like it's coming out of the top of somebody's head? Like just shift people over or shift yourself. A lot of the time you just move yourself. You don't have to get people to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I try as much as possible, but I don't also obsess over it because you can also crop things out.
Yeah.
You know, I took some, or I had my husband take a few photos of me and the kids at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And there's, you know, this man in the side of the photos who did not move the entire time. He just was there with his big backpack. And so I got home and I just cropped him out.
Yeah.
You don't know that he's there. Like, but it's not worth trying to walk around for 5 minutes trying to find a different spot.
Yeah. So what, do you use Lightroom or Photoshop or something like that?
I use Lightroom for everything.
Yeah.
And I have Lightroom on, so maybe I'll just talk a bit about what I did while I was on my trip, because it can be really overwhelming to come home and have potentially thousands of photos go through. And while I love taking pictures, I'm also, part of the appeal of getting back into film is that there's only 24 or 36 pictures on a roll.
Right.
And there's not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of this, or there's not 10 photos of the same thing. The way
you think more. Yeah, you think about it more.
So one of the things I do when I'm traveling is I go through, especially on my phone, I go through my pictures every evening and delete. Yeah. Delete the ones that definitely are just bad, that they didn't turn out. Mm-hmm. If I took 3 or 4 photos of the same scene, I did that because I want one of them to turn out. I didn't do that because I want 4 of them.
Right. So just pick one.
I just pick one.
Yeah.
And then when I am home at the end, and I'll actually edit them. So I have Lightroom on my phone.
Oh.
And, or I have, you know, even just the basic editor that comes on the phone is enough.
Yeah.
And I will do that because then I found when I got home, I didn't have to do anything with my iPhone pictures except upload them to my computer. And
nice.
They were done. Yeah. So I think that helped. I didn't do that with my digital photos. Like I didn't go through them on my camera because I also just didn't want to spend every evening just going through photos.
Yeah.
And so I found that was helpful. And I also find it's really good to think about before you leave on your trip. Why are you taking the pictures? Are you taking them to just show people on your phone when you get home, or do you want to make a book, or you know, upload them to an online album or something like that? Because I think it's good to have a plan so that they don't just sit on a hard drive or a disc or whatever. When
I think the more you think about your photography, the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah.
You know, what am I trying to capture? Why do I want this photo? Yeah. And it takes, I mean, when I first got into photography, I would take thousands of pictures that I never did anything with.
Yeah.
And when I go back now, because then of course you have to back up your photos because you don't want to lose them and all that. And it gets like you have giant backup drives.
No, I'm with you. I know.
And so I went back to some of my old photos because I got into this habit trying to photograph my daughter's basketball games.
Yes.
Which is challenging. It's really challenging because especially kids basketball is indoors. It's not well lit. You know, it could be really bad. But you learn a lot doing that. But what I didn't learn until much later is stop taking so many photos and think about what you want.
Yes.
Like what are you trying to capture? So I think it's important for people to think about that and have kind of a general plan. You know, there are people, and that's why very early photographers, one of the things that they often like to do is they take pictures of doors, interesting doors, or interesting this or interesting that, flowers, whatever it is. And I think that's a good way to get started with thinking about photography, like, because then you develop an eye for something that captures your attention and you go for that.
I totally agree.
Instead of just spray and pray.
Yes, spray. I think if you think about why you're taking photos, so if your goal is, or the general reason that you're taking pictures is because you want to come home and show your family, for example, or your extended family or something, think about whether or not they'll want to look through everything you're taking as well. I mean, one of the things I really learned, and I learned this many years ago, was looking through. So my grandparents traveled a lot. They did, in their retirement, they did a lot of traveling. And it was all film, and my grandfather was the photographer. And so they're all in albums. And I remember finding out that they had these albums and sitting down to look at them. And so many of them were so boring. Like they were just, no one was in them. There was no people in them. They were just scenery or buildings or, the things they were seeing on their tours, but there was nothing interesting about them.
Right. And lots of people do that. And if I'm going to I go to a lot of interesting places. I go to chateaus and stuff. But I try to find an interesting angle to my photo.
Yes.
Not the straight on wide angle, like there it be, because that's boring. Nobody wants to see that. And
I think when those are interspersed with a sense of maybe who was on the trip with you or, the lunch you had, between museums that you were visiting or whatever, it tells a story of your day or your time. And I think that, just photos of scenery or of, buildings or all landscapes. I don't know. You just have to think about your audience. If the goal is that you're doing it to share with others, think about maybe how your pictures tell the story of your trip. And if your goal is because you love taking pictures of antique doors and you do that for yourself,
then do that.
Different. That's different. Yeah. So I think it is having that in mind before you go. One tip I can give for iPhone or smartphone photography that I did before I left was I backed up all my photos and deleted all the photos. So I had an empty photo.
Right.
So I knew
empty your library. Yeah. Because you have room.
I had room, and I also knew that when I got back from my trip that I could everything on my phone was from our trip.
Right.
And so I could just, and I've done this already, I could just upload them to, I keep everything online, and then it's backed up in full resolution. And I've started to delete these off my phone because I don't want, 1,000 iPhone pictures from our trip on my phone for all eternity either. What am I going to do with them?
Right. And to me, it's much more important to have, I don't know, if I go somewhere for a week, I will probably keep 100 photos.
Yeah.
Which is, it seems like a lot, but when you start with photography, you will probably have 10,000 of that week. And that's overwhelming. So it's better to keep just a few photos that you're proud of, that mean something to you, than thousands of photos that are just going to clog up your hard drive and you're never going to look at again. It's like the old albums, and I have friends who put together beautiful albums, and that's a really good way to go too, just to print a book with, 20 photos of your trip or something. It doesn't need to be massive. But it's something that you'll have around your house that you will sit. I love to look at photos. I never look at video. So this is a quirk of mine. I see people walking around doing video of stuff. And I would never, ever look at that again. And even for the podcast, I know I should get into video. I know it would be a little bit, I would have to do a little bit of learning, but it wouldn't be that hard. But I don't enjoy it. I mean, I haven't found the enjoyment in it because it's video. Just too much information, too much going on. Like, I don't know. I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, I take way more still photos than I do video. I did take short video clips on vacation this time because I do want to remember what we all were like, you know, at certain points, and what, how small the kids were, or
how their voice sounded like.
Their voices, And so, but it doesn't need to be a 10-minute video. It can be
exactly
30 seconds. And so,
again, if you do it with purpose, it's good.
That's right.
You know, if you know what you're trying to get out of this video, wonderful. But if you just like holding your phone, I see people do this. Like,
well, and a lot of people, you can tell they're doing it so that they can share it on social media or whatever. And that's the whole purpose of it.
Well, yeah, but is anybody going to watch this?
Well, I guess so.
I guess. I don't know. They have patient friends, I guess.
I know. I do make photo books. So that's the ultimate goal for this trip, is that all of my photos, or not all of them, but, you know, a big amount of them will go into
a nice book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very good plan. Okay, let's talk about safety a little bit.
Yes.
I'll let you go first.
Sure. So I did find there was a few episodes of your podcast that talked about pickpockets and safety, and I found those, not that I didn't know those tips, but they were a good reminder, because I hadn't been to Europe in many years, that I just needed to keep that in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. And so there's a few things. I brought with me a very small crossbody purse that would fit. So I didn't bring my full wallet with me to France. I pared it down to just the things I needed.
Yep.
And I had those on a small wallet, like a small wallet that had a keychain attached to it. And I could actually clip that to the inside zipper of my purse.
Cool.
So I knew that if anyone reached in to grab it, it wasn't going to just come out of my bag.
Right.
So
that
that
would feel something.
Yeah. So that was my wallet, but it also, so it would hold that, and it would hold my iPhone and my sunglasses, like not a lot. But then it could sit really close to my body, and I could always have it accessible. And then for my camera, I bought, before we left, a new camera bag, because I have as much of a problem with camera bags as I do with cameras.
We all do.
Buying too many of them. But I'd had a really cool looking camera bag, but in the end it was cool looking and not very functional. Mm-hmm. I ended up selling that one and getting a Low Pro, which is a camera brand. But it was a nice looking backpack. It didn't look like a very obvious camera bag. Mm. But what I really liked about it was that the way that you get into the camera storage area is you have to take the whole backpack off.
Right, it's up against your back.
It zips up against your back. Mm-hmm. And so there was no way, if it was on me, that anyone could ever get into it and get any of my gear. Right. And so and it was all padded and super comfortable on top of it.
And did it have a raincoat?
And it had a raincoat. Yes.
Exactly. So you need that in France. I mean, the raincoat, honestly, you need that. Because it does rain, you know. So.
We had really good weather, and thankfully I didn't need it. But yes, I was very happy that I had it, knowing that if we were out and it started to rain, I'd be fine.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I didn't necessarily bring that bag out every time we went, because I said I only brought one camera and one lens out usually when we went out. So often what I would do is I would just have the camera itself on the strap around my, like, crossbody around me. Mm-hmm. And my husband would usually have a backpack with, you know, water bottles and our extra supplies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And if needed, if I wanted a break from carrying it, I could put it in there. But usually I just carry it. And I didn't love the idea of carrying around my camera gear, all my camera gear. And I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts, like, you put it down and you don't want to forget about it or something like that.
Which has happened to me. When you're tired and jet lagged, things happen.
On a bus or something, right?
I left it on a bus. Yes, I left it on a bus in Paris and then got it again.
Yeah, like I feel sick just thinking about that.
Yes. Oh, and it had my 6D, and it had the Canon L1724.
Oh my goodness.
Attached to the body, and I had another one. I can't remember which. It might have been the 75 to 150, also an L lens. So I had plenty of yeah. And I left it on the bus.
But you got it back.
I got it back. Thank goodness that people are really. There's wonderful people in the world. I have been so lucky with my camera equipment. I have done really stupid things, but it's usually because I'm tired and you're too tired and you get dumb.
Yeah. So I mean, take out as little as you really need.
Yeah.
Is my advice. And as long as you feel safe, and hopefully you do, leaving the rest back in your hotel or apartment.
Yeah.
And we always did. We always felt very safe. And really, outside of Paris, we weren't in big touristy major cities.
Right.
Montpellier we were in Montpellier, and it was big, but it still wasn't. It's nothing like Paris.
Right.
So. And we were very fortunate. We didn't experience any attempts at pickpocketing or people trying to, trick us into things. We didn't experience any of that in Paris. So
that's good.
I felt I was prepared for it because I've definitely experienced it, and I've experienced it in other European cities, quite aggressively at times, but no, everything was fine. And the reality is lots of people are walking around with cameras, nice cameras around their necks. So you're not alone. You don't stand out. And
you just have to have your wits about you and zip up your bag and all the stuff that we've talked about in previous episodes. But in my case, because I carry heavy lenses, I got myself a belt with a clip-on thing, and it's absolutely the ugliest thing you can do, but I don't care, because if I keep it around my neck, after a while my neck hurts.
Yes, I know.
And so I just go, you know what? I'll just put it on my belt and not be too worried about how it looks. It doesn't look great, but nobody can get that thing off of me. And I can't forget it anywhere either, because it's hooked to my body. So, so...
I was going to say the other thing, just speaking of, looking ridiculous or looking like you have, I don't know, like you're a photographer, is you have to come to terms with that. If you want to take pictures with your really good camera, then you have to have your camera with you. I mean, if
you don't bring it, you won't do anything with it.
That's right. And if you're so concerned with how you look, then, or, not revealing yourself as a visitor, then maybe you just need to have an iPhone with you or a smartphone.
Yeah. And smartphones, they do a really good job. They even do nice big, I have the iPhone 10. I get 4,300 pixels by something. It's a big, nice, nice size photo that you can crop and still get a decent picture. So honestly,
I have the iPhone 8, and I'm just blown away. Honestly, the quality is so good. And
they're not good if you're going to be taking pictures inside of a cathedral. Unless if it's a spot that happens to be well lit, you'll be fine. But for the kind of cathedral photography that I like to do, I need a prime lens. I need a good or sports. You can't do that with an iPhone, but they've come a long way. They have. You can.
And I was just going to say, I think you also have to know yourself. And if you bring your DSLR and you take, thousands of pictures, they often need a bit more editing work at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get home. If you really don't plan on doing that and have no interest in it, then just think about that. If you're going to be unhappy because you don't like the quality of the photos, but you don't want to take time in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever to do any work on them, then what was the point of taking all the pictures if you don't?
Exactly.
So you just have to know who you are. I personally love editing, and that for me is a fun thing to do. So it's something I look forward to, but it's not something everyone looks forward to.
Right.
So.
I can totally spend 5 hours just in Lightroom fiddling with my photos and tagging photos. I'm quite happy doing that.
Yeah, you're my long lost photography soulmate.
But I don't use Photoshop. I have a thing called Affinity Photo that can do little things. It's kind of a much simplified version of Photoshop. I got into GIMP a little bit, but then my husband got better at it. So if I need something done in GIMP, I just tell, fix that.
Yeah. No, I am exclusively Lightroom. I just use Lightroom.
Yeah.
And that works. That works for me. So
yeah. And I have to be cranky a little bit. A lot of these Instagram, because I'm trying to do posting some pictures on Instagram for Addicted to France for it's the kind of thing that I do along with the podcast.
Yes.
And it's so many of these photos that they post on Instagram, these accounts that I follow, they look completely unnatural. Like these people have clearly spent way too much time in Photoshop applying all sorts of filters and layers and whatever it is that they're doing. I'm like, this doesn't look anything like France.
Yeah.
To me, and I live here, so I'm I think it's good also if you have an idea of the aesthetic of what you want. Like there are some people who just love this stuff, though. I mean, they
it's the really high definition stuff that you're talking about, I think. Yeah,
right.
It's and you know what? Our eyes are so used to seeing it now that it can make your own photos feel disappointing. And I think that you do have to remember that none of that is what the original photo looked like.
Right.
Like there's so much post-production and, layers that have been added and
removed. And some of these photos, I've been in this spot. I know it doesn't look like that. They've please, but people don't know and they just get drawn because it does look beautiful. You can't take that away from them. They do make beautiful, but your vacation photos are not going to be quite that impressive looking for most of us. But that's why I enjoyed yours, is because your angle was so interesting, even though you weren't doing, anything. I mean, clearly you were fixing a few color things in Lightroom, and you were, like the white balance or whatever that we all do.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but you didn't doctor your photos. You just have nice, natural looking photos of what's happening around you with your kids and stuff, and that's really good. And
to be honest, I mean, I said I love editing, but there's also a point. Like I have, I have a job, I have 2 kids, I have my family, I have a dog to walk. Like I can't sit and be swapping out skies to make the sky look more dramatic than it was. That's just not and that's just, for me, that's not where I want. Right. That's not what I want my photos to be. I want my photo to be a representation of what it actually was.
Yeah.
And how I remember it to be.
Yeah.
So
I bought a thing that I used a few times for swapping skies. That's all it does, is it just swaps the sky. And because sometimes, since I live in France year round, I'm sometimes in places like in the middle of the winter, or if I go in the middle of the afternoon and it looks milky, the sky just uninteresting. And honestly, if you go to Normandy, it's really hard to get a nice looking sky in Normandy because it's always milky and gray and just not very interesting. Anyway, I got one of those and I played with it the first month I got it. And then I just decided, you know what? You're being an idiot. It doesn't look any better. It just looks like just showy. It just makes your photo look showy. But at least it had it would only take 2 minutes to do it. Whereas if you try to do that in Photoshop, there's lots of steps. I
think sometimes, and sometimes it's fun to just figure out what you like and don't like. And like you said, what's your aesthetic that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Is it is it for your photos to look really dramatic, or is it for them to look exactly like how you remember it to be, or you know, do you want them all to be black and white, whatever?
Yeah.
But
you can do a lot of that with an iPhone. I mean, the iPhone, just the stuff that comes with the editing that they give you, will let you do, well, it won't do a sky replacement at this point, but it will do quite a bit of like enhancing colors and
it will. It's very, very smart. And if you're thinking about, if you have a modern version of a smartphone and you're thinking, should I go and get like a decent point and shoot or just use my phone? A friend of mine went to a good camera store and asked them that same question. And they said, use your phone.
Yeah.
Because basically the reason your phone cost $800 or whatever it cost is because of the camera.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really good camera.
Right.
And so, you're not going to get.
Yeah, I've had people ask me the same question: is should I buy a point and shoot it? But their intention is not to get into photography and edit and all of that. They're never going to shoot raw. They don't even know what that means. They don't care. So I tell them, just use your phone. And like you said, back up your phone before you go. Empty your, copy all your photos and make room on your phone so you have enough room to take a bunch of photos. And then be a little picky about how you take your photos, think about it a little bit. And you'll take really good photos. Like, you don't need a point and shoot. Nobody buys point and shoots anymore. For your kids, it might be interesting.
For your kids, yeah. Or for special purpose. Like, you can get, fun ones that are for underwater or, but yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. Like, just use the camera you have.
Yep.
You have to know yourself. If you're not someone who likes to take photos, don't worry. You don't have to be.
Yeah.
Not everyone is expecting you to come home with a million.
No. And if you just take a few good ones that will make you smile when you see them again in 5 years.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
That's what you need. You need to have some things that will bring back the memory of whatever it is you enjoyed. So if it was that beautiful meal, people get chided about taking photos of their food, but maybe they will really enjoy, I like to cook. So sometimes I take a photo just so I can remember the arrangement on the plate and things like that.
For sure.
To me, that's interesting. And so just do what's interesting to you. Give it some thought. Use your iPhone. If you zoom in with your iPhone a little bit, you tend to get a little, you zoom in and then you tap where you want the focus to be.
Yes.
You get better pictures that way. So again, you just like when you're shooting with a DSLR, you have to think, where's my focus? You can now do that with an iPhone, which is extraordinary. I'm like, wow.
It's amazing. Yeah. And you can take photos with your smartphone that will compensate for the fact that you are totally backlit and you're in shadow, and it will compensate and give you a better photo than you'd ever be able to get by handing someone your good DSLR. And
although if you have the 60, you can do that too.
Yes, but to have to hand it to somebody, we did that a few times, but mostly if I wanted a photo of our family and we were out somewhere, I just gave them asked someone to take it with my phone.
Yeah, I never hand. Isn't that strange? Because my phone is pretty expensive too.
I know.
But I don't hand my DSLR to anybody, no.
I did it once. I think I only did it once on the trip, and we were on the Eiffel Tower, up on the Eiffel Tower. Yeah. So first of all, I knew that the man probably wasn't going to run. And,
right.
And I did the same for him. So I took a picture of him and his wife, and then he took a picture of our family.
Right.
But the photo he took was terrible because he doesn't know how to use my camera. And so it would have been better to just hand over my phone and have a picture with that. So.
Oh, very nice. Okay, well, we managed to talk about photography for a long time.
We did. I feel like we probably could talk about it for longer, but maybe not everyone would be as interested.
Yeah. No, but and be very, very careful with your phone. People will, they're thieves in Paris. They will try to look for opportunities to grab your phone and run. And if you're not a marathon runner, they look at me and they're like, oh, this chick can't run after me. And it's true. And so they will target me just because of that. And so I need to be really, really careful to have my phone somewhere, always know where it is, have it zipped up, unless it's in my hand and I'm using it, and be paranoid about the camera too, because although nobody has ever tried to steal my camera in France, I've tried to lose my camera, but nobody's ever tried to steal it from me. But again, be careful. I don't think, honestly, if I were a thief, I'd look for your iPhone more than your camera, because you get more money out of an iPhone.
Yeah, I had an inside zipped pocket in my purse, the one I talked about. So I found that if that was going to be several steps for someone to have to go and get that away from me. So that made me feel an extra level of security with my phone.
And for some reason, you don't have pickpockets in America. I don't know what it is that they don't want to go to America or Canada.
There are, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, I have several times on the subway here in Toronto tapped people on the shoulder and said, your bag is wide open, and so that they can zip it up. But, you don't have to think about it over there. No, it's not the same. It's not the same.
If you leave your bag unzipped in Paris, things are going to come out that you wanted to keep.
Yeah, you do have to think about it. And I think your point about being tired, or, after a long day of walking, or maybe it's your travel day, that's when you make mistakes that you might not normally make. And so it's just good to think about that.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
Know your limits.
That's right.
Jessica, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. I couldn't do this podcast without people like you who are willing to tell me all about their thoughts and their experiences, because, it's, to me, that matters more than anything else, is sharing real things that really happen to you, that really you care about.
I really appreciate it, Annie. And talking about the trip, if you can find someone when you get home from your trip to talk about it in a way that is, sort of brings all the memories back, like this has done, it makes your trip last that much longer. So
and then you'll get to listen to the episode in 10 years or whatever and go, oh, that's right. That sounded really funny.
But thanks very much, and I'll maybe share a link where I post we'll be posting a lot of my pictures from this trip. So if anyone wants to look at them, you can see them.
Yes, I'll put links to to the stuff that you sent me that we've discussed in the show notes for this episode.
That's great. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you very much. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Sue and Dave Walsh, for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week, and my thanks to all the other patrons who support the show month after month. Thank you for giving back. Would you buy me a coffee if we met in real life? Well, you can do that by supporting the show on Patreon for as little as $2 per month. Visit patreon.com/join us, patreon.com. Join us, no spaces or dashes, to see the different reward tiers, and thank you so much for giving back. And you can do a one-time donation too. You go to the Join Us in France website. There's a green button that says Tip Your Guide, and tips are always appreciated. I polled the Join Us in France community on Facebook to see what day of the week you prefer to arrive in Paris. I was honestly thinking you would say Sunday. But no, the vast majority of you said it doesn't matter to me. I arrive whenever I can get a good deal on a flight, which really makes sense. So I'm going to be using the poll a lot because I'm learning so much about what you want and how you think. I also put another poll up in the group asking what would be a good hashtag for the podcast. And the vast majority of you voted for hashtag Join Us in France. So I'll be using that on social media, and I'd love to see your vacation photos. Use the hashtag Join Us in France, and I'll look for it and I will comment back. I had to spend a few days in Spain so I could take care of some business. And let me tell you, the weather in Catalonia, it is so nice. I went to the beach with my dogs every day. The sun was out every day. It was so pleasant. It wasn't hot, but sunny and just really pleasant. I mean, a little coat and you're fine. In the meantime, in Toulouse, the whole week was gray, rainy, cold. It even snowed in a lot of France, Paris in particular. I saw some photos. I don't miss the snow, I must say. I miss how pretty it is when it first snows, but not the cold and not the wet and not the shoveling, definitely not the shoveling. Anyway, that was a really nice escapade, but by the time you hear this, I'll be in France with my family again. Remember to check out the walking tours in Paris, May 5th through May 8th. And to do that, you go to addictedtofrance.com. Thank you for listening and for sharing the podcast, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2019 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.